It's the Weekly Wrap with your host, broadcasting legend Bruce Wolf, and his trusty sidekick, comedian Tim Slagle. And now, without further ado, Bruce Wolf.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle. Oh, Tim's not here again on the Weekly Wrap. And Chris, it's you and me, or it's me and Mr. Snurdly. I tell you, I always hated the solo radio shows. Like Rush Limbaugh always sounded to me like he was here, that's my secretary. Thank you. You're looking very nice today. Okay. Just gave me the script. Wait, this is the script to Julius Caesar, Flavius to Morellus, hence ho these idle creatures. I'm not doing a one-man Julius Caesar show. I'm sorry. But
plan B.
But here's the thing. You know, I listen to Rush Limbaugh, and he sounded like he was in a padded cell and he was bouncing off the walls because he was talking to himself. Now, he did have the wall of sound, right? I mean, it had all those sound bites and everything. And I'm sure, Chris, you're going to be able to rustle up a lot of sound right now over the next hour.
I was hoping you'd do more of a Phil Hendry show, and then you take calls from yourself and have 4 different.
Now, you know that I hate to admit this. I'm not familiar with Phil Hendry.
He was on the Loop.
No. Was he in Rick Kempfer's book?
No, because he was a syndicated show. I don't think Rick covered the syndicated guys.
I got to tell you, you know, we replayed the Rick Kempfer interview because it's such an evergreen. And by the way, the Loop used to be owned by Evergreen Media, but we replayed that a couple of weeks ago when we were off. And first of all, my oldest son, listened to that. He won't listen to the political stuff, but he listened to that. There wasn't enough Ed Till in it for him. And then somebody else listened to it too who liked it. So there's the Venn diagram of people who like me from the Loop days and who like me in my recent vintage. Very small overlap there. That like me in both places.
What about the sportscaster?
The sportscaster
on TV. Because I think the Loop stuff, you're chiming in and you're having fun and chat and stuff like that.
Right. Then you've got 3 circles there.
Yeah.
And
that's a Venn diagram for Kamala right there.
Totally. Kamala. What as good a way as any is segueing into her. So apparently she's going with the Trump is crazy thing. And, and of late, you're familiar with Godwin's law, of course, which is at some point, every political conversation devolves into an accusation that the other side is Hitler. And as a matter of fact, the great thing about Twitter is I actually talked to Godwin once on Twitter, the actual Godwin of Godwin's law, the guy who made it up. And of course, as we get into the very, very crazy days with only, as of this writing, 12 days left before the election, although the election has already begun. I voted already. Have you voted already, Chris? May I ask that?
I only vote on election day. I love the tradition.
Well, it's and also I believe when you go in there, you insist on showing a photo ID and your birth certificate and having a blood test. Right?
I will say this. My first time ever voting at age 18, I whipped out my ID and the person goes, no, we don't need to see that. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then I just scribbled some signature, and anybody could be anybody.
Okay. So my experience was, well, first of all, I remember like those first times that I voted. I mean, I'm talking about voting for Nixon. Okay. In 72. And you walk into this hyperbaric chamber and you've got to be able to bench press at least 150 pounds just to pull the lever. I mean, that's how tough it was. Oh, yeah. Forget about, literacy tests or things like that. I mean, it was a test of strength. And it was really, really neat. Now, I mean, it's so flimsy. It's like migrants could live in the little voting shelter that you vote in. So this time, and it wasn't a long line. It was very convenient. I did a minimal amount of electioneering. Basically, my Larry David impersonation, where I offered water to minorities and hoped that I got arrested. Did you see Curb in the last year at all?
I watched the whole season. Yeah.
Okay, don't spoil it for me because I'm too cheap to get HBO Max. So I was basically scarfing off other people to watch some of the episodes, and I didn't see the last two episodes of the last season of Curb. I watched the entire 20-year run of it, but I didn't see it. But the whole premise of Curb this time was that apparently there was voter suppression because Larry had offered water to a black woman in line in Georgia. And you know that there was a University of Georgia poll, a survey of people, and 0% said that they had any problems at all with voting in the 2022 election. I mean, that's how off the wall.
Well, they also said there's been more greater voter turnout and in minority communities since those laws as well.
Right. I mean, it's just, thank you for buttressing my argument with that. I appreciate, I didn't even know that. But, and the thing about like giving water, people are allowed to get water. It just can't be from, as somebody said, a guy in an NRA t-shirt with a gun saying, you better vote this way and I'll give you the water. No, but you can get water if you're in line. And,
the whole season was based on a false premise.
Totally ridiculous.
But then they had you watched enough where you saw where like they bring in MSNBC, Joe Scarborough and stuff, and they're talking.
Oh yeah.
And so you're merging those two things, and you have idiots like Joe Scarborough on there saying like that is the law, and even Willie thinks he's real news. Willie, what's his last name?
Yeah, right. Yeah, Willie Geist.
Yeah. So he's supposed to be like the hard news guy on Morning Joe, and even
right.
Saying it.
Be right there. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So how you base the whole show on that, and you're bringing in actual news people saying that is the law, making people think that is the law.
You know what? I'll let Larry have the literary license, the poetic license. I mean, I feel bad. Richard Lewis died. I knew him a little bit. Used to do hallway ambush interviews with him at Channel 32. It was a fun show. It had its run. The premise of the last season was ridiculous, but who cares about the premises? So anyway, so Kamala is going for the Nazi thing, and I mean, and then of course I got to feel well. Here, can I tell you about what happened at my Reform High Holiday services this year? Okay, so I mean, without Tim here or anything, I'm going to go all Jew all the time. I think so. So I torture myself with these Reform High Holiday services. The music is good, and you can't beat the relaxation of a Zoom service. I do everything on Zoom. Yes, it is Bruce's Jews News. Though it doesn't really count, by the way, unless you hear the shofar, the ram's horn, in person. I understand from the Orthodox, so it doesn't even count if you see it on Zoom. But the first rabbi on Rosh Hashanah, and why basically the Reform movement is kind of dying, so they're having to consolidate synagogues. And there was the Reform, so they have two white male rabbis now at one synagogue. I mean, they're supposedly progressive. The Reform Judaism, Milton Himmelfarb once said, was the Democratic Party with holidays. So, but why don't they have one woman rabbi, maybe a trans, some minority, but two white males, and then one on Rosh Hashanah, the New Year. He takes a swipe at Trump for saying the Jews could cost. He said the Jews could cost him the election. And that's, and I figured, okay, I could live with that. I mean, I know what I'm getting into, here with the Democrats, and I figured I could handle that. But then on Yom Kippur, 10 days later, the Day of Atonement, the second rabbi brought the Trump thing up again. And of course, neither one of them brought up that Harris not taking Shapiro is about as anti-Semitic as you can get. So, and then of course they have this 21st century. Go ahead.
My husband doesn't know the meaning of Hanukkah. Remember that too.
Oh, well, Emhoff is ridiculous. He knows the. Well, it is a mitzvah to bang the nanny. It's very. It's like the 11th commandment, but anyway, and then they have this prayer. It's a 21st century prayer, they call it, in which we beat ourselves up over the environment, but nothing says, hey, we should atone for the sin which we have committed for grossly overstating the climate crisis. And as also, I note that last year, because I pay too much attention to this stuff, And this was before October 7th and way before the election. So there wasn't much to get political about last year. So about all one of the rabbis said that was political was how great Greta Thunberg is. And I was wondering why her name wasn't extolled in the environmental prayer this year. Maybe because she turned into an anti-Semitic bitch.
Yeah.
Okay, that could be it. But next year in Jerusalem, as we say, which is not in Israel, according to CBS News, apparently. But anyway, so that's what Harris is going for. And then did you see the way they mocked Trump's McDonald's appearance? Now, everybody knew that this was a stunt, okay? You know, as I think John Podhoretz said on the commentary podcast, you know, Donald Trump's had 2 assassination attempts against him. They're not just going to let people get in line and, you know, and have Trump say, will you have fries with that AR-15 you're pointing at me? So, yeah, of course it was a stunt. But everybody thinks that they're like Tom Wolfe now. Remember when he wrote about Leonard Bernstein and deconstructed the whole thing about how Bernstein had paid so much for the for the hors d'oeuvres and shrimp, and you know it was the rich people trying to with their noblesse oblige entertain the Black Panthers. Yeah, we know it's a stunt, but you know you got the likes of my good friend Eric Zorn saying it was journalistic malpractice for not pointing out what a stunt it was. Everybody knew it was a stunt, and yet it still somehow worked. I mean, it still gave that everyman feel that Trump. I mean, do you agree that it to the extent that Trump needs it, that it works somehow?
I don't think he needed it, but I think it worked. And I think, and you sound so petty when you say it's a stunt, when you obviously know that they have to close the place down to let him in there. Then the McDonald's, you know, the privately owned McDonald's, they had to put that sign up. Did you notice that?
What did the sign say?
So right when the first shot, when Trump's getting the apron and everything, and it's the owner and the employee, there's a big sign in the back, which I've never seen at a McDonald's. This McDonald's is independently owned.
Oh, right. They got to point it out that it's
distance.
not McDonald's policy to endorse a candidate. And by the way, hey, here's what you should be really doing, McDonald's. How about looking into those records of yours? I'm sure you can go back to when Kamala Harris supposedly worked there and also brought her Glock to work because it was in a dangerous neighborhood. Bruce Wolf, sans Tim Slagle, but with Chris in some undisclosed location in the United States of America on the Weekly Wrap. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. Sans Tim. So, we have to kick over that picture that we had for a couple of weeks ago of Pritzker in Japan with Rahm, specifically tailored for Tim.
Yeah, no,
okay.
We got to keep.
And I just feel so bad. But it's never going to grow old. So anyway, Geraldo, who I have a bit of a history with, not as big as my Don Lemon history, but Geraldo, apparently he can't get a gig anymore. Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I got this, thank goodness. But Geraldo has a post on Twitter. Boy, it's way too long.
Yeah,
I think they had to pay extra for that.
Way too long.
I mean, when I noticed, I tried to do a long tweet the other day, and I got Elon Musk saying, "Oh, do you want this extra thing? You got to pay for it now to tweet longer." And geez, I aren't you making enough money from Tesla? Oh, okay. No, I love Twitter. Anyway, Geraldo basically comes down to saying, and I didn't read the thing, that you should vote for Harris. And my comment to that, Chris, was her head is about as empty as Al Capone's vault. Oh yeah.
Solid.
Pretty good, huh?
Very, very good.
That's the sound of one hand laughing, I believe. Okay. So, poor her. Of course, it's all about me, right? There was a point at which Dan Proft and I were afraid that Geraldo was going to replace us because we had the midday gig on WLS and Geraldo was put on the Cumulus station in New York, WABC. And I think the idea was that he gets going there and then he syndicates and, takes over our spot, but he failed. so we didn't lose our gig.
Well,
And apparently he got kicked off the 5 or whatever on Fox, and I mean he's had so many lives.
I think Fox just didn't renew his contract.
Well,
But
why?
what he does now is, well, he was fighting with the host on the 5 too much, and I think
Okay.
Greg Gutfeld's your moneymaker, and he hates his guts. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
he rips him on Gutfeld all the time. And I think Geraldo now is a contributor on News Nation, which I'm sure pays a ton.
Right. Well, News Nation is about the last refuge of every scoundrel. Although I'd take a gig there anytime. They even contacted me about doing like sports stuff until they probably realized that I'm not too expert on that. But that's where like Chris Cuomo,
Yeah.
and I mean, it's the last. I think Dan Rostenkowski is doing political analysis, a hologram of him on News Nation. But
Rod Blagojevich is a contributor on Fox, so you got to go lower than that to be on News
wait a
Nation.
minute. Repeat our top
Rod
story.
Blagojevich- This is the top story.
Rod Blagojevich is a contributor for Fox.
Yes, he's on various shows doing his.
Does he replace? Oh, yeah. I think he's sitting in the Krauthammer seat on Special Report now.
He
I
comes
think
on,
Brett Baer goes to Rod.
He's
Yeah.
usually on from the Fox studio, the Chicago Fox studios, where they have that weird dark corner that they put everybody in.
I haven't seen it.
Everyone that appears
But
on Fox News from Chicago is in that weird dark corner.
I see. I've never. Why haven't I been in? Everybody's been on that. You would think. You know who's been on that? On Fox is Ray Stevens, the new
Yes.
WLS morning show host.
Amy's on all the time, or she used to be on all the time.
Oh, is Amy Jacobson on there?
I've seen Amy on Hannity. I've seen her on Laura Ingraham, and I don't watch these shows, and so she must be on. When I stumble past them and see her,
That's amazing. What was she talking
on
about?
talking
Getting
about,
fired from her?
well, she was once on as a. They didn't even mention WIND. They had her listed as the volleyball coach. This is back in the day when we were talking about transgenders in sports.
Oh,
So because she was speaking out against it, which I'm surprised that didn't get her fired before the.
before she did get fired.
Yeah.
And by the way, Chris, I mean, you're winning today with me. I think I may have you replace Tim. Do you do stand up as well? Because you know why you just got my good graces? Because you called AM 560 WINB. That's why.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes, man. That's and if you throw in a Howard Miller reference or a Dave Baum, you had me at WIND. Anyway, good to see that Amy getting the exposure. That's an Amy joke. Amy and I are like this, okay? And for the record, for those of you just listening to it, I've crossed my index finger with my middle finger. And she's the last person to put me on the radio. We used to sing holiday songs together. Baby, It's Cold Outside. That sexist sexual assault song we would sing during the holidays. But and that's the last gig I ever had on the radio. And except for this one is a great one. 11 a.m. every Friday in Northwest Indiana. And you can even get it on Rumble, I understand. So, all right. So that's Geraldo. She's as empty as Al Capone's vault. Then Trump, Tim's rule, I that I don't like the Tim Foyle stuff. Well, I mean, I'll enjoy talking to him about it in lieu of a Civil War roundtable, but Tim's a stand-up comedian. That Trump is kidding people. He's just trying to get a rise, no pun intended, when he talks about Arnold Palmer's penis. Okay. But that got everybody angry, or, got MSNBC and that ilk, or, Rachel Maddow got angry about talking about Arnie's manhood, which of course leads to another Bruce Wolf story. Tell me if I've told this one before. Very quick one. Have you heard it?
Is it an Arnold Palmer story?
It's an Arnold Palmer story. First, I'll tell you I can't even tell. There's a famous joke about Arnold Palmer, and it has to do with his manhood a little bit, or anybody's. And I don't even know how to tell it, but I'll wade into it. It's just that Arnold Palmer goes to he won't go into a gas station, or he needs to go into a private bathroom because he would always come out of bathrooms soaked. And the reason was because when he was standing in a urinal, the guy next to him would always turn and say, say, "Aren't you Arnold Palmer?" And so and would drench him. I I didn't tell that joke right, but those are the innards of the joke. Anyway, so I shot a 79 on July the 14th, 2001 at Pine Meadow Golf Course. Okay, it's the first time I broke 80 ever.
Great round.
And it was terrific. You've played with me. You know how tough a game golf is. You, and your dad played a couple of years ago. So I remember we used to do these interviews with celebrities on Channel 32. Invariably they'd be pitching something, some product or some good works or whatever. And Arnie was always pitching something. Okay. And I mean, he was tireless. And so he was on the show, a satellite interview, and they wanted me to interview him. And of course I did the obligatory stuff, whatever Quaker State motor oil or something that he was endorsing, new golf course. I don't know. But about a minute into it, I said, "Look, Arnie, I got to tell you, I broke 80 for the first time in my life. Pine Meadow, went birdie the last 2 holes." He says, "Bruce, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard." It's just like, it's Arnold Palmer. Okay. So I never had to do another thing as far as I was concerned, in TV or radio again, because once you've gotten the blessing of the king, there really isn't much to do after that.
Did you save that recording and parse it out and have it as your ringtone?
My problem is I can't find any of the things. I interviewed Paul McCartney once, joked around with him. I don't know where it is. I did I boxed the traffic reporter Sheila White when celebrity boxing was a big deal, and I turned it into a musical where I sang a parody of the theme from Rocky. "I can't fight Sheila White. She's a woman. It's not right." And I actually had Wayne Mesmer dub in his voice over mine on that. Jock Headblade, great producer, put that all together on Channel 32. I don't have that stuff. I don't even know where it is. And you know who the referee in that match was? Jerry Springer. We finished the whole thing, in the Springer studios where Sheila caught me boxing with somebody else. It was great. I'll find it. We'll play it.
A lot of production that went into that
for best stuff. Oh, it was unbelievable. I mean, in those days, I mean, it's only, it's about 20 years ago. Sportscaster, and there's a rebuttable presumption that it was just cutbacks. I think you're more likely to see Comcast shut off Channel 5, okay, before Channel 5 replaces its full-time sportscaster. I mean, that's how bad it is getting with these rights fees. Everybody's going to, what? Have you heard of this thing called, who knows, how that's going to turn out. But anyway, where was I? This is supposed to be a political talk show.
About 50% of it is.
I was talking about Arnie. Yeah, there we go. And the rest is me strolling down memory lane. So, all right, I have this next on the rundown right here. Well, we'll get into it in the next segment. Okay, Bruce Wolf, sans Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. Bruce Wolf, no Tim Slagle this week on the weekly wrap. Chris, our crack producer, filling in, getting overtime for this. So, I saw this ad. I think I may have mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. And I've seen other people on Twitter mention this now, that if there is one ad that it's going to do for Trump, and this was in the middle of an NFL game, and you see it, you can't stop laughing and seeing how devastating it is. You can't believe it's real. It shows this scraggly, scuzzy-looking guy who is the accused, apparently, or was convicted. I don't even know, of murdering like a dad of a young child, and he was an undocumented immigrant is the most euphemistic way of putting it, and he's in jail and wanted the transsexual operation. And That's what Kamala Harris supports. Now, I mean, it's absolutely devastating. Now, I gotta give credit to the Harris campaign. They've tried to spin this by saying that it's Trump's. This regulation was promulgated during the Trump administration, and you know what? I bet you that's true. But do you think that Donald Trump actually supports that kind of thing? No, he doesn't. And by the way, it's standard operating procedure for any president to sit there and say, I don't know, I'm only the president. I don't know what's going on. Obama did it. He was like an outsider to his own administration. Trump absolutely did it. He did it with Fauci. I mean, that may have even been the thing that cost him the election, was that he stood outside. You know, he was like against Fauci, but he didn't do anything about it. And of course, Clinton was the champion with that. When they would, the next sex scandal revelation would come up, and they'd say, "Oh, we all knew about that. It's time to move on." And that's where MoveOn.org came from. So it's a standard operating procedure for administrations to do this. But there's no way that Trump is in favor of this, and she is in favor of that, and everybody believes that, and that's why, I mean, everybody makes fun of her because she's such an airhead, but it's like the same with Walz when he said that he was a knucklehead. Better that than get to the truth, which is that he's just an inveterate liar, right? Rod Blagojevich, speaking of Fox contributors, I used to do, when I did the show on WLS. Matter of fact, the last guy I hosted a show with was Sam Adam, who was Rod Blagojevich's attorney in the first trial, the one that Rob got the hung jury on. And Sam was a great guy. I did a lot of shows with him. And you know what Rod's defense on that was? Well, that's Rod. He just talks. He didn't really mean it. He wasn't really putting the squeeze on anybody. Hey, somebody bought that. And then they had to have another trial. And then fortunately, Trump, did Trump actually, did he pardon Rod, or did he commute the sentence? I can't remember.
I believe it was commute the sentence.
Yeah, either way. So that's why I love when I read a Rod tweet in favor of Trump. No bias there whatsoever. Just the guy got shot of the clink. But although I actually believe Rod on this one when he talks about it. But in any event.
Oh, he does say when he's on Fox that he has left the Democratic Party. He doesn't say
right. I think Rod admitted that he voted for Reagan years ago. So yeah, Rod was heterodox. There's no question about that. And by that, I mean that he did Elvis and Engelbert Humperdinck imitations. You remember when Rod was actually kind of a charismatic guy? He was, he was the young guy. He still had the nice Bruce Wolf hair. That kind of thing.
You didn't see this past summer when he appeared at, I believe it was Taste of Elmwood Park, and he was doing Elvis songs on the main stage.
I don't doubt it for a second. These people have no shame whatsoever. Do you remember what was it, the scandal in Great Britain? I want to say it was I can't remember the name, Profumo, I believe. The guy was involved with Christine somebody. I want to say Keeler. I can't remember. Boy, this is really tough. 10 points for me if I got half of it right. But after he got caught in this sex scandal, he just spent the rest of his life out of the public eye, trying to do good works. These people, on the other hand, they have no shame. They capitalize on it. They try to make an even bigger score. And of course, I mean, Donald Trump is the best. I mean, yeah. I mean, just think about it. As I was reading it, yet another J.B. Pritzker, not the parody account, the actual J.B. Pritzker Twitter, in which he was saying, don't ever forget that he was convicted of 34 felonies. And I was just thinking, yeah, I know that. And he's going to be the president of the United States again, which, I mean, I know the Jonah Goldberg types of the world, they underestimate the joy of owning the libs. That's the problem with the Jonah. And I think Jonah's great. Speaking of Jonah and Stephen Hayes and those guys. So Stephen Hayes, who with Jonah created the Dispatch, had a tweet this week in which he said Trump's advisors are turning on him. And this actually presaged the John Kelly stuff that came out, which of course is old. Everybody knows about John Kelly and what he thinks of Trump. But then it came up again, another Hitler thing. So, but Stephen Hayes wrote that Trump's advisors were turning on him. And I responded with a tweet. Well, what about Pompeo? And Mike Pompeo is important, especially if we get back to Bruce's Jews news for a second, because I think Mike Pompeo is going to be pretty hard on Iran, like Trump was, and I think he's the kind of person that'll be back in with the and he's not a guy who's abandoned Trump. And then this guy Arthur Herman, who we follow each other on Twitter, and I am honored to be followed by Art Herman because he was a presidential advisor at one point, and he rattled off a list of advisors, the names of which I can't quite remember right now, but I want to say one is Ratliff or whatever, that are still with Trump. And I've read elsewhere that I think Victor Davis Hanson was saying that the applications are coming in. Lots of people still want to work for Trump. I mean, I wonder if even Bill Barr would want to be attorney general again, even though he said that he would vote for Trump because with Trump, it's like Russian roulette, but with Kamala Harris, it's much, much worse. So I don't see, a problem that way, but it was just interesting that, you get this attitude that from the never Trumpers that it's going to be a lot worse with him. And maybe, I'm like Candide and living in the best of all possible worlds. But I know it's kind of crazy to believe that a guy is kind of too dumb to get any of the things that he's saying. He's promising everything to everybody. He's going to be able to deduct everything. We're going to be, if we actually had to pay for all this, we go and, we triple the debt right now. That stuff is, Chris, admit it. He's not going to do a lot of the things he says he's going to do. I mean, you believe, right? Am I right about that?
Give me a specific.
I mean, every single tariff, no tax on tips, no tax on this, everything. He's giving away everything to everybody in the swing states.
You can't do it with an executive order. So, I mean, he needs to have Congress and
thank God they'll be holding him back. It'll be like in the Three Stooges when Curly would said, "Hold me back," they weren't. Yeah, because you just right. There'll be somebody who will, the Congress will stop him from doing that. But anyway, I thought, that was, just a little bit out there on the part of on the part of the guys at the Dispatch. But they're great writers, and I agree with a lot of what they say. But I feel like I have to be the adult in the room and actually vote for Donald Trump, which I believe I already said at the beginning of the show that I did just a couple of days ago. Meanwhile, you got the likes of Julia Louis Dreyfus, who was Kamala Harris in Veep before there was a Kamala Harris. She did a tweet that said, and I don't know if I can say this on the air, but she says, "I don't know about you, but I'd really like to get the government out of my effing snatch." Okay. And, I was thinking, it's unfortunate, a little too late for Arnold Palmer to get in there, but it is amazing the comparisons that you're hearing between her role in Veep, which was, did you watch Veep at all?
I was just going to ask you this. I watched every episode of Veep. I loved it. And I actually loved the show that the guy did before that. But when I see the scenarios with Kamala, it's totally reminds me of scenes from Veep. And you can totally see the things behind the scenes that you would think and see Kamala Harris in those scenes of the clueless person, being shunned by the president here,
Yeah.
It's just, it seems like it's almost to a T.
I mean, right. We've seen this experience before. I mean, that, art has a tough time outstripping life. The crazy, dystopian fantasy turns out to be reality before you know it. Yeah. I mean, she was on, we're recording this on Thursday. She was with Aaron Anderson Cooper, Friendly Territory last night. And he asked her like a specific question. Was it about taxing or whatever? And she said something like, I can't really get into specifics. I'm a nerd. I'm going to study that stuff. I mean, are you kidding me? And David Axelrod, I mean, a hack, okay, a Democratic hack, even couldn't even bring himself to say that she did a good job. It was a mixed bag. He actually said something about that she came up with like a word salad mixture. It was horrible, and you wonder what the purposes of her getting out there for that stuff is now. But we'll explore that maybe in our final segment. Bruce Wolf, Chris on the Weekly Wrap. Bruce Wolf, Chris on the Weekly Wrap, and you wanted to say something about Kamala.
Well, in the show also, it portrayed how the staffers, you wanted to keep moving up that ladder, and vice president was, almost second on the list to being working for the president. And how many staffers she's lost. And you look back at those employees trying to get those jobs and how it was like cutthroat and how you would just quit. She has to be such a miserable person to work.
Yeah.
Must blame everybody else for all her problems or her deficiencies, I should say. And that they would just quit those jobs nonstop. It's always the staff you always hear about, right?
Right. So, I mean, we just talked in the last segment about, the generals and the advisors who don't want to work for Trump. And I'm sure that is true to a great extent.
They've all been fired. That's what.
Well, right. Well, apparently, yeah, Trump doesn't like to fire, but then he wants to get them to quit, but then they don't, then he has to fire them. But yeah, this will be multiplied, fivefold if she gets into office. I mean, she will have to do that. I mean, this is the woman who, I mean, it was hard to believe it. She had to study for a dinner that she was going to. It was the Atlantic. I think the publisher of the Atlantic, I guess, was going to have her. And you notice that the Atlantic tried to carry water over the Atlantic this week with some kind of exposure against Trump with a Gold Star family. And then the Gold Star family said, what are you talking about? We love Trump. Anyway. Yeah, right. I loved Veep, and but now I can't even look. It's too embarrassing to watch Kamala now. I don't want to see it. I don't even want to see the clips. They're just I can't look at it. I never liked Gaper's Blocks. I didn't like watching the first rounds of American Idol because of the people they bring on there only to, rip them to shreds. I just can't stand looking at it. So let me ask you, I know Tim would always give us the odds and all that. Do you have any idea the skinny on this campaign right now? Because I still see Democratic tweeters saying, oh, yeah, she's got it. And she could even win in a landslide or Trump could win in a landslide. But every other thing that I'm thinking, and maybe, it's my bias, is just like, it seems to all be going Trump's way. Am I right or wrong about this?
Well, let's bring up Tim's famous betting odds, because it is at an all-time high at this point.
Yeah.
For Trump, 20 points.
Yeah, right.
Growing and growing since he peaked there, and kind of the sugar high wore off. People get to see her more and more. It just keeps growing and growing for Trump.
Yeah. So there's Colin Rugg, who's a conservative, probably, too much tinfoil for me, but I read he quoted Mark Halperin. You know who Mark Halperin is, right? He's the guy he's basically a liberal, but he likes to be accurate in polling. And he was the guy in 2015 who said, watch out, Trump. Watch out for this Trump. He was the first to say this. He also said that months before that happened, that Biden would not be running. And Biden then did run, kind of. But
fired from NBC with one of those sexual misconduct things during the Me Too movement.
Halperin was?
Yes. Now he's on like he's on like Newsmax and stuff. Yes.
He didn't pull a Charlie Rose or something, did he?
It was inappropriate stuff in the workplace. It was, yeah.
I mean, how specific can we get about this? I mean, what did he do? Well, whatever. I mean, it's beside the point
Well,
right now. But he's saying that the results will be known before election day, and that it would be.
Where did you hear that?
I thought I read a quote from him saying Halperin. This Colin Rugg tweet has a quote from Halperin. Now he tried to qualify it a little bit, something that he could be wrong, but he was definitely, elbowing his way into this. We could know before election day that Trump won. I mean, so you haven't seen anything along those lines, have you?
Well, here's the quote that says he's going to be known on election day, which would mean that they don't have enough. That's the whole too big to rig thing that they keep talking about. Win the early voting so much that they can't be producing these ballots, late night ballots that shift the total, because you outvote the cheat, as Tim would say.
Right. Right. Okay. So, on the other hand, I've seen somebody come up with a scenario where Trump. Oh, didn't you see? Wasn't there a couple of polls that showed that Trump could be winning the popular vote, and then somebody said, and she could win the electoral college, and wouldn't that be a fine kettle of fish? But in any event, I mean, as we do this, it's 12 days before we get out of this, and of course, I keep thinking it's going to be over in 12. It won't be. Something's going to happen where the Democrats are going to have their march on the Capitol. Okay, and then they're going to ask Kamala, and Kamala will then do what Trump wanted Mike Pence to do.
But I think we forget 2016. Remember, they were burning limousines and rioting in the streets of D.C. that day on the 20th. You don't remember that? I
remember back to 2004 when Ohio supposedly was rigged against Kerry. So, but I mean, I gotta say the biggest protest I can recall is our very own January 6th. So, but they will do it. They will claim that it was rigged. You want to turn to sports just for a second? Now I don't feel so bad because Tim never likes this stuff. Do you?
Can we put a button on Halperin really quick?
Oh, go right ahead.
A dozen when he worked at ABC News before NBC, but NBC News, MSNBC fired him. A dozen women came forward saying he was inappropriate in the workplace, sexual harassment. So there you go.
Well, it's only a dozen. I mean, try to get me,
not even a baker's dozen.
You got to come up with at least 15. Now, the latest Trump accusation, I mean, somebody like a former Sports Illustrated model, she came out after 31 years. And this is what's called in the, remember the sexual assault trial that Trump lost? I know it's hard to keep all the trials that he's lost in your head straight, but this one again, Jean Carroll, that he lost. Remember, some of the evidence that got him was what's called propensity evidence. It was like him grabbing a flight attendant or doing something like that just came out this week. So, and of course, Andy McCarthy, a guy I really trust, he's the guy who put away the blind shake, the first World Trade Center bombing, and he was in favor of Trump's impeachment. He called that the evidence against Trump in that case by Eugene Carroll underwhelming. Okay, because it just wasn't. But I'm wondering now, Andy, in light of the new propensity and evidence of this woman who came out after 31 years, now is it enough to find Trump liable for that? In any event, I don't think. Are you trying to diminish Mark Halperin's credibility based on sexual
no, but
misconduct?
no one talks about that anymore, and it kind of all went away. I mean, he got fired. He co-hosted a show with the really annoying guy. Remember, they were also on that Showtime show, The Circus, together.
Okay.
The guy that wore the cowboy hat that was George Bush's campaign manager. Never watched
Lee Atwater.
I watched The Circus. The Circus was actually very good.
It
was all leading up to the 2016 election, so they had everything, and they covered it all on election night, and they had If you can go back and watch it, it still reads like.
All right. Let me ask you. We don't even have time to do sports for election night. What should I watch on election night? Brett Baer.
Brett Baer. Why, you want to get Arizona called by?
Exactly. I was going to say. I suggest Fox does not call.
I always flip
Arizona
around
until Valentine's Day. That's what I'm saying.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
I'm a flipper. I go through all the channels. See what CNN. I end up on CNN more than not. With I think John King's decent on their big board, and I do like Karnecki on MSNBC on the big board, but I can't.
You know, Karnecki gets a lot of credit. He's on the commentary podcast a lot, and he was the guy who said 2022. It doesn't look like it's going to be the red wave. It might not be, and it wasn't. All right, I'll leave you with this. So Matt Continetti of the commentary podcast said he was getting this vibe that it was going to be like 2022 because the independent vote. Well, but on the other hand, he had said earlier that the independent vote in 2022 at the end was breaking towards the Democrats. This time it seems more going to Trump. I don't know where it is at this moment. Do you know where the independent vote is?
I do not.
Okay. But meantime, Eli Lake, who also was on this commentary podcast, saying, nah, Trump's going to win it. So that's what we have. We have a split in the circuits on that. And you think Trump's going to win, right?
I don't think it's a 20-point spread like the betting odds have, but I think he's in a decent position. People talk about, the polls he's up in the polls where he was never before. I think there's more people, or I know more people that now talk about how they like Trump that would never talk about it before.
I think so. Basically, it's just the people who are hiding are coming out, but that doesn't mean he's got a greater number. It's not going to be this Trafalgar number that skyrockets him.
Yeah, I think the hidden people, the hidden vote is
they're not hiding anymore. Correct. They're not hiding. Okay, that's an interesting cultural phenomenon.
People that talk about it that never talked about it before, that are very public about it, and would never even bring it up in a public setting. Very
sage. And with that, Bruce Wolf on the Weekly Wrap.
And that's the Weekly Wrap on radio and television. Follow Bruce at Bruce Wolf Shy on Twitter and Tim at timslagle.com. The Weekly Wrap with Bruce Wolf, a CP Pods production.